Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming and braving the cold weather and being here this morning. Um, but I am Kelly Cooper, and I'm a nutrition consultant and a holistic wellness educator. And then I was in the Master Gardener Intern class 2024, and I'm just really happy to be here today. Thank you for having me. Really quickly, if you don't mind, I would just like to open with a prayer, if you don't mind, really fast. Lord God, the creator of all things, I just thank you for bringing us here safely together today. I ask that you open our hearts and our minds to hear what you have to say to us about our connection to this earth and just our health and wellness in general. Just ask that everything I say would be your words and that people would hear what they need to hear today, Lord. Thank you for everything. Take us home safely today. And just let 2025 be a year full of blessings and healing for us all. We thank you and ask this in your name. Amen. All right. Thank you for letting me do that. Okay. Figure out the clicker here. Okay, so first of all, I have to give the disclaimer that this is not medical advice. It's for educational purposes only, and to please, contact your healthcare practitioner if you've got questions or want to start a new health protocol. Okay, so just a quick overview for today. We're going to understand our connection to plants in the earth. We're going to discover how observing plants and spending time gardening can teach you about your own health. And we can learn practical ways to work on your health and wellness. And so just know that really everything we're going to talk about today, all of these topics that we're going to touch on briefly could be their own classes. So I'm going to keep things very top level. I mean, I will answer questions as we go, of course, but just kind of keep things top level to give you just some good foundational things to start off the year. Okay. So I want to start off with this verse, and I had honestly just planned to talk to you all about how it shows our connectedness to everything. And I'll be honest, this morning, God told me I kind of had to tell you a little bit more about myself with it. So this verse came to me when I was 9 years old. My grandmother passed away, and immediately following her funeral services, my grandfather collapsed with a heart attack. And I was 9 years old, so we went back to my grandmother's house, and I sat down at my grandfather's desk, which we weren't really allowed to sit at his desk, but I sat there because I didn't know what else to do. And he had one of those verse of the day calendars, and that was the verse that was on the calendar that day. And I was 9, but at least I understood what that verse meant, and that my grandfather had a broken heart, and that's what had happened today. I understood that. This verse has just shown up for me in my life over and over. So I just want to tell you just briefly, quick background. When I was 12 years old, I went to school that day, 7th grade. I started getting a headache, and within a few days, the pain was so bad, I couldn't even function. And it took the doctors about 6 months to figure out what was going on and to find a medication that would help with the pain. But with that, the pain actually never went away. I spent from age 12 to age 35. I had a headache every single day of my life. Sometimes it was just a dull ache. Sometimes it was like migraine level pain, but it was every day there was pain. And there were some other things. I think we've all had traumas, whether they're the big T traumas or the little T traumas. So there were traumas in my life. There were some spiritual things. My dad was a preacher when we were growing up. And when I was 16, he started questioning his faith, and he wasn't sure there was a God anymore. And not throwing my dad under the bus. I love my dad very much. But what I'm saying, it creates questions that you have. So then there's some spiritual turmoil. So you've got the emotional, the spiritual, and the physical all working together to either work for your good, or they can work to cause dis-ease in your body. And that's really why I'm sharing this verse, is because it is true. Every bit of it is true. I've experienced myself, and, I've done all the things. I've done the elimination diets and all the things, and working on my diet actually did help my headaches. I found relief from pain that way. But I had a lot of other health issues. I still have health issues I'm working on. But unless you work on the mind, the body, and the soul, you're never going to have true wellness. You can eat all the right things, you can exercise every day, but if you don't deal with the emotional and the spiritual stuff too, you're still going to have dis-ease or disease. So that's just really the basis of how I approach wellness. And we'll just move on from there. Okay. So just some quick facts. We're just going to talk about some of the connectedness that we have between plants and ourselves. So did you know that our blood plasma is a 98% match to seawater? Did you know that the earth and the human body have about the same percentage of calcium? So the earth has about 1.1% and the human body has about 1.4%. And of the 118 elements on earth, 21 of them are found in the human body. And then 20 to 60% of our genes can be found in plants, depending on the species. So the way the genes get expressed in plants versus the way they get expressed in the human body can be very different. But the fact of the matter remains we share genetic material with plants, with the animals, and with the earth around us. So I won't stay on this very long, but I just wanted you to kind of see the similarities between a plant cell and an animal cell. And, the cell walls of a plant cell are very different than ours, and the way they function is somewhat different. But I did want you to see there's a lot of similarities. We've got a lot of the similar cell structures. So even though the cells of a plant form very different systems than our human cells do, on a cellular level, we are very, very similar. So the point is we're of this earth. We are innately connected to the plants and the animals and the very ground beneath our feet. And while there are many differences between humans and plants, we have many similarities. And so many of the principles that we can apply in gardening can be applied to our own health and wellness. And so one of the things that I just want to mention here is that, in the same way that plants show us what they need, they might have discolored leaves or spots, or they look wilty, or, whatever the many symptoms are that then we have to go and discern and figure out what's going on with our plants. The same is true for the symptoms that we have in our body. When we have a physical symptom, it is a sign to us that something is out of balance, and we need to do the discernment work to figure out what's going on. Okay, so this is what I'm calling the top 3 common needs of plants and humans. We need soil and water, or nutrients. We need air, and we need sunlight. And we're going to just talk about each of those things a little bit today. At the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about our culture and environment, because those things are, also really important. But the idea here is I just really want to get you thinking today. This is a short list, but there are so many ways that we have commonalities. There's so many ways we have connection to this earth. And I just want you to think about different ways that you can approach your health and wellness in this new year. Okay, so we know that soil is the foundation for healthy plants. And as gardeners, we know that soil quality affects the plant's health and production from start to finish. Plants need soil that's rich in organic matter. We need healthy soil microorganisms that helps, keep nutrients available to plants. It keeps disease and viruses away. So we need rich soil for our plants, and we need all of those things in it. But the same thing is true for humans. And although we're not, rooted into soil, we need a healthy foundation. So we also need all the same nutrients. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Many of the same nutrients anyway as plants do. We need microorganisms. We need good, healthy, gut bacteria to digest our food, and our guts are also connected to our mental health. So we need good gut bacteria for our mental health as well. Everything is connected. Just everything is connected. So the same way that we need a good foundation for our plants, we need good foundation for our bodies. And it's really quick. I just liked this image because it really shows how plants and soil are really the basis for everything. Nematodes and fungi and bacteria feed both on plants and the soil. Bigger things feed on the smaller things. And of course, larger animals and humans, we're all part of this soil food web too. Everything is connected and we all work together. Okay. So just getting into a bit of the nutrition stuff here. So plants require at least 14 mineral elements for their nutrition. So that includes nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, chlorine, boron, iron, manganese, copper, zinc, nickel, and molybdenum. And I won't make you guys listen to me read those again, but there's 15 essential nutrients that humans need. And as you can see, there's many that are the same. And because plants need many of those same minerals, they're rich in the things that we need to eat, and that's why eating plants is very important for us. Plants and humans all need proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Of course, how that looks for each of us is different, but we all need those macronutrients as well. Okay, so I have given you all a handout, and on your handout, we're going to just talk about some of the top level things over here. Don't worry, there's no judgment. Don't worry. There's no judgment. We're going to talk about all this. No judgment. But I want to start with, y'all, there's never any judgment, and we all have to live life, and I love chips. So just know that. Okay. These are just the foods that we really want to try to avoid, and I'm going to just kind of, top view it down. Of course, if you have questions, please feel free to let me know. But we really want to avoid the ultra-processed foods, of course, as much as possible, and it's because these foods are the ones that cause us the most damage. They tend to cause inflammation, blood sugar spikes, high blood pressure, hormone issues, all of the things that we know these foods cause for us. And I do want to just note a couple of things, though. Refined sugars, those are going to be, that's just like your white table sugar is considered a refined sugar. And then all of your, which I'm not going to say it. I think I have it on your handout, but I'm not going to say it out loud, the brand names. But the like aspartame and artificial sweeteners, I just want you to know that those are actually neurotoxins, and they do have neurological effects when you use them. So we're going to be talking about some, real food sweeteners in a little bit, but you always got to kind of stick to those. And then the other thing I want to just say about damaged fats, and there's a whole list again on your handout of what some of those to look for. Damaged fats are oils that are so refined that by the time they're done being manufactured, they're already rancid before they even put them in the bottle to send them to the store. So that's what you need to know, is they're just bad from the get-go. That being said, avoiding them in today's world is really just almost impossible. So everything that we're saying here about like what to avoid, these are just guidelines. These are helpful things. I don't want you to like stress out all the time about what you're eating and not eating, because that is also can add to the disease that you feel in your body. So again, this isn't about stress. This is just learning things, having a better idea, and just, maybe today have the chips and tomorrow don't, and then the next day have the chips again. I don't know, but that's what I try to do. Okay. And then some other things you just want to avoid are pesticides and then hormones and antibiotics from food. But does anybody have any questions really about the depleting foods or why they're depleting? Okay. All right. So we're going to talk now a little bit more about just nourishing foods. And again, there's examples of all of this on your handout. We're going to start with unrefined carbohydrates, and the leafy vegetables and crunchy vegetables. Those are really the ones that are going to pack the most nutrient punch in terms of antioxidants and vitamins and minerals that our body really needs. And then, so then you see the unrefined carbohydrates. So again, what I also want to say about carbohydrates is I think we've all been scared in the last several years. We've been scared into thinking we all need low carb or no carb diets and that sort of thing. Carbohydrates are really important for energy production. We all need carbohydrates to some level. The level that we need is different for everybody. But I do want you to know that women in particular are very sensitive to carbs, and our individual bodies as women need the right amount of carbs for our own body. And if you go too low carb, it can really cause stress. It can release stress hormones in your body. It can cause thyroid issues. So just for the women, you really want to make sure you get your, carbohydrate intake kind of dialed in. You don't want to go too low on it, is really what I'm getting at. Don't be scared of carbohydrates. We all need them. And the same goes for fats too. I think, I grew up in the 80s and 90s when we all ate the low fat everything and the chocolate low fat cookies out of the box and, all that. So, but the truth is our bodies need fat. Our brains are made up of mostly fat. We need fat to absorb certain vitamins and minerals. We need fat for hormone production. Of course, we know that fat keeps us warm, and it also cushions our organs. Lots of roles of fat in the body. So it's really important that we get fat, and it's just getting the right sources of fat. So again, there's some examples on your handout of healthy fats. And then, okay, so for clean protein, so protein is the building blocks for everything. And so that's why we want to make sure we have plenty of good, clean protein in our diet. Moving on to dairy. The thing I really want to say about dairy and to highlight there is obviously if you can do raw milk and raw cheese, farm fresh eggs, those sorts of things, that is best. But if you're going to be buying those things at the store, you want to stick with the full fat options. So you want whole milk, you want heavy cream, half and half. The thing is when they take the fat out for like 1% and 2% milks and things like that, when they take the fat out, it doesn't taste good anymore. So then they have to put fillers and sweeteners and other things back in it to make it palatable. So it's really better. You're just better off having the full fat versions and not worrying about the fat because it's the good fats. Let's see. For the unrefined, minimally processed sugars and sweeteners, again, there's examples there. But really, the idea with all of those is because they're not processed as much as like a white table sugar or some of the other sweeteners. They still have some of their mineral content intact. So like maple syrup, molasses, honey, all of those have minerals. Coconut sugar all still have minerals in them. So that's why they're a great thing to add in to your baking or to your diet because you're still getting some benefits from them. And then beverage-wise with nourishing foods, you want to stick to water and herbal teas. I'm not talking about like sweet Louisiana tea, which I know we all love, but water, herbal teas, matcha, green tea, those sorts of things. Do we have any questions just about the general, any of those things here?
How do you feel about coffee?
Coffee is a mixed bag, honestly. So I would say, and we'll talk about it, I'll mention it again in a minute. You don't want to count coffee towards your water intake for the day. And we're going to talk about water intake in a minute. So you don't want to count that towards your water intake. And beyond that, it's really a personal thing. Some people are really affected by the caffeine in it, and that can cause a lot of issues for people, just the caffeine itself. Some people have a lot of issues with the acidic content of coffee, and it causes stomach and digestive issues. So, and then other people really seem fine with it and can actually experience benefits from the caffeine and those things. And it really is a personal thing. So as far as coffee, it's kind of like a trial and error thing, and you have to decide, what works for you.
Where do potatoes and turnips fit?
So potatoes and turnips, those would be in the unrefined starches. Unrefined starches are going to be anything like your root vegetables, winter squash, potatoes, all that stuff, and then also grains, legumes, things like that. Yes. Right. I will. Okay, so the question was if, poultry and fish and other meats are marked as like wild caught or, grass-fed, pasture-raised, those sorts of things. Most of the time they are, but not always. So, it really just kind of depends on the producer, but usually they are marked and have some sort of, sticker that will tell you how they were raised. At least they'll just say like farm raised, wild caught, pasture raised, something like that. And then usually they'll also have something like if they're, antibiotic free or anything like that, that'll usually be noted too on any of your meat packages. Yes. So the question was, about grass-fed beef. So when you buy it from someone, if you go out and buy, half a cow, you can obviously find out what they feed it and how they feed it and all that. When you go to the grocery store, it should be labeled for you, and it should at least say grass-fed or grass-finished. Grass-fed is different than grass-finished. Grass-finished means, they ate all the normal whatever feed diet, and then at the very end, they gave them a bunch of grass to fatten them up before they, took them. So the grass-finished is a little bit different than grass-fed. Any other questions about this? Uh-huh. Yes, not all, but most beef gets some kind of hormones or antibiotics. So that's important to, look for your sources of that as well. What your food eats, you also eat. Yes.
May I clarify a little?
Please, yes.
I'm on the beef side.
Yes, please.
I know you don't need to worry about antibiotics because it's all tested. And when you see a package that says, meat that says antibiotic free, that's fine. All the meat in the store is antibiotic free. It's tested. If you have an animal that has injured itself or has gotten sick and you need to give it an antibiotic to get it well, there's a period of time that must be given before that animal can be processed. And if it's dairy, you absolutely do not need to worry about antibiotics in your dairy products. It doesn't matter whether it's organic or not. That milk is tested before it leaves the dairy. It's tested when it gets to the processing plant. If you have a dairy that is producing a lot of milk and they have one cow that needed antibiotics and they didn't keep that cow's milk out of the process, that entire tank of milk is going to be condemned, every bit of it. And that is a big amount of money. A dairyman is not going to risk that. So we can be confident on our dairy stuff. I don't care what brand it is. I don't care what percent, any of that. You don't need to worry about antibiotics in your dairy products. Again, if growth hormones implants are being used in beef cattle, there is a time period that withdrawal that has to be done, cleared before they can be processed. So a lot of that is playing on our fear of consumers that we're about to get something when it's not there in the first place.
Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. All right, so I just want to pause quickly on the booster foods category of nourishing foods. These are just kind of the foods that you get to add into your diet that really add an extra nutritive punch. So cultured and fermented foods, these are the foods that feed the good bacteria in our guts. And then spices and herbs, I think we all know, they're like my favorite thing, but it's what adds a lot of a lot of flavor to your food, but it's also medicine for our bodies. So I just love herbs and spices. And then seaweed and algae, just so you know, those are really great because of their dark green and blue color. They're really powerful antioxidants. And the chlorophyll in them binds to heavy metals and helps remove heavy metals from your body. Cilantro is another thing that also binds heavy metals, just since I'm talking about it. But so that's why I include them there, because there's something that you can add them. They're usually in powders. You can take them as a supplement. You can add them to smoothies, that sort of thing. But any questions, though, about the nourishing foods before I move? The booster foods, before I move on. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about water, and I'm going to take a drink of water real quick. Okay, yeah, we're going to demo the water. All right, but you can see here from this image that water really does a lot in our body. It's really important for a lot of different processes. We know that plants, it's the same thing. Plants need the right amount of water, not too much and not too little. They need water in order to uptake their nutrients properly. And it's the same for us as humans. Our bodies are more than 70% water. And we need fresh, clean water in order to thrive. We also, because remember that our plasma is a 98% match to seawater, that means we need salt and electrolytes in our body for blood to flow properly and for a lot of different processes to happen. So we do need water, but we need water that's got minerals in it. And so we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Okay. So just some practical takeaways on this section here, just talking about some of the nutrition things. First of all, just an easy way to kind of simplify all of this is I call it building your plate. And I think we all have seen these plates with our kids or in school. It's just an easy way to picture it. So the bottom half of your plate here, this big area, that needs to be your leafy greens and your crunchy vegetables. That's half of your plate. Then a quarter of your plate, that's your unrefined starches. So that's your root vegetables, your grains, beans, legumes. The other quarter is your protein. And that's just an easy way to lay out your plate so that you kind of know you're getting about the right amount when you're eating. I included on your handouts some charts for serving sizes and things like that. So there's some more specific information you can use there, but this is just a really easy way to picture it in your mind and kind of know what you're getting in any given, meal. And then I always say to aim for 80-20. And so that means if 80% of the time you're kind of following these guidelines and doing all the things, that's a pretty good thing. And then 20% of the time you're eating some of the other stuff. That's a pretty good ratio. And as you move along in your health journey, you can always change that to 90-10, try to change how it looks. But I think 80-20 is a pretty good balance given our lives, because we all have to make room for the fact that we're busy, and sometimes we have to grab a fast meal, or we just want to celebrate and enjoy a piece of cake, and there's room to have joy and all of those things. And so 80-20 is a good ratio. Eat real whole foods, eat a rainbow of colors. Eating the rainbow is how you get lots of antioxidants and, of course, all the vitamins and minerals that you need. Cook at home as much as possible. So even if you're eating like frozen chicken nuggets, if you can cook those at home, you're still avoiding a lot of those fats that like they would be fried in at a fast food place. So just cook at home as much as possible. And then, of course, make things from scratch as often as you're able to, because then, of course, you can control everything that's in it. In terms of water, you want to aim to drink half your weight in ounces of water per day. So, for example, if you weigh 150 pounds, you want to try to drink 75 ounces of water per day. And this is, again, just a general guideline. What everybody needs is a little bit different. And of course, if you have restrictions on fluid intake and those sorts of things, you want to follow your doctor's guidelines on that. But speaking about how we need water with minerals and electrolytes, adding a pinch of sea salt or Redmond's real salt, that's a brand of salt, to your water, just to your cup of water, just a little pinch, will give you the minerals and electrolytes that you need. It will help your cells to uptake the water better, help get you hydrated better. So just adding that little pinch of salt is an easy thing you can do. And then again, like we talked about before, herbal teas can count towards your water intake, but things like coffee, soda, fruit juice, alcohol, those things don't nourish your body. They can deplete your body. And so you don't want to count those towards your water intake, your 75 ounces or whatever, your goal is for the day. And what I want to say most about all of this is I don't want you to walk away from this going, I don't know how to do all these things she's talking about. This is just, everything I do is baby steps. I choose one thing a day for my body to do. I choose one thing a day for my mind and one thing for my soul. And sometimes those things overlap, because you can take a walk without your phone and be outside, and that's good for your body, your mind, and your soul. And then there's other days I'm worried about, making sure I move my body that day, and I want to make sure I read my Bible for my soul that day. Whatever the thing is, it's just choosing a couple of things for mind, body, and soul that I'm focused on in a day or in a week to kind of set new habits, baby step through it. Yes.
Sorry.
Sure. Yes. So that is what I do. So the question was, is if I use a water purifier or filter, that filters everything out. And I do. So I do use, it's sort of like one of those Berkey. I don't know if any of you've seen a Berkey water filter. It's a homemade setup of that. I made my own, but it's like that. So I do filter my water, and I do suggest you filter water because there's a lot of contaminants in our water. But if you're going to filter it, it takes out everything. So it takes out the good minerals and the bad minerals. So that's why you really need to add, if you're going to drink especially filtered water, you need to add that pinch of sea salt or salt to it to help you. And if you're on well water, you're a lot luckier. You probably don't have to filter it. You can get all the good minerals and everything right out of the ground. So any other questions just about any of these takeaways? Sure. So the question was just about storing water in plastic. And it's a very good question. Anything that is stored in plastic runs the risk of having microplastics leach into it. Especially anything that's in a soft plastic container, like a water bottle and a lot of other food containers. When you have water or whatever, it can be a food, any other liquid, doesn't matter. We have it in those containers and it is exposed to temperatures, whether it's hot or cold. That's what causes the leaching, and all of those things that are in the stores when they're being stored, they get exposed to lots of temperatures. So just know there is a good chance you've got microplastics in your water. But the What you should do is if you're at home and you can store your water, your filtered water, keep it in stainless steel, keep it in glass. Those are the best containers. Just avoid plastic as much as possible. And the same for your drinking containers, mason jars or glasses. The stainless steel travel mugs and that sort of thing are your best way to go. Any other questions about this? Yes. Yes, that's a great point. Someone just mentioned that salt in your water doesn't always taste good. So if you don't want to drink salty water, you can also just put a little, pinch of the Celtic salt or sea salt on your tongue or under your tongue and drink that with some water. That will also give you the electrolytes. There's also mineral drops that they can have a flavor too because they're minerals and they, have kind of a earthy flavor to them. But if you just put, a drop or two in your water, those don't have a lot of flavor. And one thing I do want to mention about the salt too is I'm not talking about like iodized table salt. You want to avoid the iodized table salt. You want like sea salt, Redmond's real salt, Himalayan pink salt. All of those are good options. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Yes, she was mentioning that a friend of hers has had cardiac issues, and so they try to avoid salt. But really, we all need salt no matter what even if you've got high blood pressure, whatever your cardiac issues or other health issues are, we do need salt for our bodies to function properly. You have to have it. So again, it's avoiding things like the iodized table salt that just have sodium and some of those basic things in it. You want the things that have the minerals and electrolytes still in it, the less processed salt. Those are the things that our bodies can use and help us to be hydrated properly. That's true. Yes, if you have enough salt, you don't crave salty foods as much, and that is very true. And one thing I can say about adding a pinch of salt to your water, if you add a little pinch and you can taste it, that probably means that you needed it. And if you add a little pinch and you can't taste it at all, it probably means you were actually pretty well hydrated. So the sign that you can, and I'm talking about just a little pinch, not adding a teaspoon, and you're going to taste a teaspoon, but a little pinch, just a good sign that your body needed it. Any other questions about any of this? That's a wonderful thing. Actually, I've heard that before, so that's a wonderful tip. But she said she adds a salt to her coffee, and it actually helps to neutralize the acid and gives it a slighter sweeter flavor. How much do you add to it? Okay, so she's saying she will brew it with the salt. So she'll put a little pinch of salt over the coffee when she brews it. So she just brews the coffee with the salt. And if she forgets, then she can add a little pinch to her cup if she wants. All right, any other questions about any of this? Okay, then real quick, we'll just talk a little bit about air. And again, I'm touching very briefly and just really high level stuff on plants here. But plants and humans both utilize air differently, but there's still some similarities. So, plants take in carbon dioxide, and that's used during photosynthesis to produce food using sunlight and water, and that provides energy to the plant. And then humans, we breathe in oxygen, and that's combined with glucose to create energy at a cellular level for humans. So we really have a symbiotic relationship with plants in this way because, they take in carbon dioxide and release the oxygen, and we take in oxygen and release the carbon dioxide. So we're all working together to kind of give each other what we need there. But air is very important for our energy intake. So working on lung capacity, deep breathing exercises, those sorts of things are really important for making sure you've got plenty of energy at a cellular level. Okay. And then I want to talk a little bit about air movement. So we know that air movement, breezes and wind, can be what strengthens stalks and trunks and branches of plants. Maybe if you've ever grown plants, in some seedlings inside or in a greenhouse, and they're like limp and don't want to stand up no matter what you do, but you give them a little airflow and they perk right up. So also air movement is what keeps plants from getting stagnant. So when you think of like a really bushy like tomato plant, when they go really crazy and you haven't pruned it and the leaves stick together and they start getting sticky and yucky and, they need airflow. Things need to move between the leaves of the plant in order to prevent mold growth and just make sure they have all the things, air to breathe, all that good stuff. The same thing is true for humans. We need movement for our wellness. moving our bodies, that's what raises our heart rate, increases our lung capacity, really starts bringing oxygen into our bodies and into our cells. And then we also need movement for our lymphatic system. Most of the things in our body work on their own, right? Our heart pumps on its own. For the most part, we breathe without thinking about it. We blink without thinking about it. We eat food and our body digests it. We don't have to tell it what to do. Most of those things just work on their own. However, our lymphatic system, we have to move in order for it to move and to flow. And so our lymphatic is really important for fluid balance, waste removal, immune response, fat absorption, hormone transport, blood pressure maintenance. So obviously, it really is important for a lot of things. And our lymphs, just so you know, your lymph nodes, there's a lot of them throughout your body. But some of the main ones, as you know, are here in your throat, which if you ever had a sore throat, sometimes those get swollen, along your collarbone, in your armpits, around our breasts, our pelvis, behind our knees. That's just some of the places. There's lots of lymph nodes throughout our body. And so if we're stagnant, then our lymph system gets stagnant. And so we have to move around, we have to get exercise, we have to get fresh air in order for our lymph system to function properly. Okay, so here's just some practical takeaways on this section. We need to try to move our body every single day. Working on breathing techniques, diaphragmatic breathing, that's where you take in those really deep breaths into your belly, all help to increase lung capacity. You want to get outside and breathe in fresh air daily. I recommend looking into lymph massage. I'm not going to go into a lot of the details on this stuff right now, obviously, but look into lymph massage and dry brushing, and then rebounding and bouncing. So rebounding is like if you've ever had a little mini trampoline, that's what a rebounder is, but you can just stand and bounce. This gets your lymph nodes going. So this gets everything starting to move. So you can just bounce. But because everything is connected, just remember that when we're physically stagnant, we're often mentally and spiritually stagnant as well. And so once one thing is out of whack, that's where you're going to start seeing, physical and emotional dis-ease. Okay, quickly, sunlight. So we know that plants use sunlight through photosynthesis to convert water and carbon dioxide into sugar, and then they use that as energy. So humans use sunlight to produce vitamin D, and that's vitamin for human health and energy production. Vitamin D is responsible for like so many things, guys. It's responsible for hormones, for our energy production, for immune response. Vitamin D is really important, and it is the sunlight hitting our skin is what triggers the production of vitamin D, and so that's why it's really important for humans to get sunlight. But sunlight is also essential for our circadian rhythm, activating our immune cells, improving symptoms of depression and anxiety. It's a precursor for many processes, and so some practical takeaways just with sunlight. And I know as gardeners, we pretty much are outside a lot, but get 15 to 30 minutes of sunshine per day with no sunscreen on. You want to get the sun directly on your skin. If you can do longer, that's great. And then you want to get outside within 30 minutes of waking up and get that sunrise in your eyes. Go outside when the sun is set and get that sunset in your eyes. This is going to help to regulate your circadian rhythm. But you really want to get sunlight into your eyes without sunglasses. So try to get it, go outside without sunglasses as much as possible. Again, don't stare at the sun at the middle of the day or do anything that hurts your eyes, but do try to get that sunlight in your eyes as much as possible. Okay, just a couple of things here. We're going to go really fast. We all know that culture and environment for our plants is really important. So how often we water, prune, fertilize, how much organic matters in the soil, the weather, toxins, if the soil's packed too hard around the roots or it's too loose, if the plants are growing too close together so they're crowded, all of the things of the plant's environment affect it and affect how it produces and how it blooms, all of the things. The energy around a plant can affect its production. I don't know if you all are familiar, but they've done studies where they'll take two groups of plants that have all the same growing conditions, but one group of plants they speak loving, kind words to, and the other group of plants they speak mean, nasty words to. And invariably, the plants that are spoken to with negative energy will wither and wilt. The plants that have positive energy grow and thrive. And so the point really is that in the same way energy affects plants, it affects humans too. And so we just need to be aware of the things that are energy wise in our environment, whether it's, negative people, or we don't have good boundaries, or, whatever the things are, our environment affects us too. The things we take in on TV, social media, 24/7 news cycles, all of those things affect our health. And we just need to be, aware of our environment. So let's see, anything else? Also, just consistency. We know that with our gardens, we have to be consistent in how we care for them, or they're not going to thrive. And the same is with our health and wellness. We've got to be consistent in focusing on it. So just some practical takeaways. Everything's connected. We're connected to the earth and nature. Our minds, bodies, and souls are connected. Your environment matters. You have to do the work consistently on your mind, body, and soul in order to find true wellness. But then also remember that none of this is linear. We always, you're taking one step forward and two step back a lot. So just remember, it takes time to bring things into balance, and we can't control everything. So we're always going to have things coming at us. So it really is just, guys, it's a baby step game. It's a trial and error game to figure out what works for you and finding habits that work for you. So anyway, let's just see. Okay, so now we're going to just wrap up, and we're going to take a cue from the trees. So I'm going to put this down for a second. And I love this picture. This is one of the oldest olive trees in the world. It's thought to be around 2,000 years old. And what I like about it is it just gives us a good solid picture of being firmly rooted into the ground, being strong and steady. We know that it has withstood a lot of storms. It's got its arms, branches raised up still. So it's just a good, strong image, and I really like it. So we're going to do a little quick exercise. I'd like everybody to stand up with me. If you feel more stable sitting down, please remain seated. That's fine, but I'd like you to stand up with me. All right. Let's stand just maybe shoulder distance apart, just where you feel good and grounded like the tree. And then a slight bend to your knees, just so you feel really steady. Make sure your belly and your glutes are relaxed. So you want your legs firm, but everything else kind of loose. All right. And then just take a few deep breaths to start in through your nose and out through your mouth. We're just going to bounce, just a light bounce for just a second, just to kind of keep breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, and just give yourself a little bounce to get your lymphatic system moving, get things going. Okay. If you want to keep bouncing, you can, that's fine, or you can stop. And we're just going to take our arms up. We're going to reach up towards the sky. Keep taking some deep breaths, reach in. You can move how you want, sway. Think about the trees swaying in the wind. Move as much or as little as you want. It depends how stormy it is for you today. But just move around and reach. But reach. And just think about something you're grateful for. Offer up a little prayer, thanks of gratitude. Take one last deep breath. Arms down. And don't we all feel so much better? More grounded, more centered. All right. So that's really all I have for you today. Yes. So thank you very much. I've included some of my contact info here. I've got my work email on here, but also, in our membership directory is my personal email, and feel free to email me there. This QR code will take you to my newsletter sign up. And I have a newsletter with just, health tips, tricks, resources, all those things. And in a few weeks, I'm going to be launching my spring foundation building workshop. So if you're just interested in building habits for the new year and just kind of setting some goals for the new year, we'll be doing that. And I'll send all the information through the newsletter. So if for any reason you don't want to use the QR code, just let me know, and I'll be happy to email or text you the newsletter sign up if you want to join me there. And then the only other thing I have is there's a few things on the table over here. I just brought a few of my favorite books, wellness books. Some of them are nutrition related, some of them are mind related, some of them are spiritual. But if just anybody wants reference material, there's some of my favorite things over there you can take a picture of. So for reference. And I think that's it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you all coming today. Have a healthy, happy 2025.